Hi, good morning everyone. My presentation is about torture and its ethical implication. My name is John Harry. Torture is a difficult topic because it involves a conflict between achieving a desired result and respecting human beings. In this presentation, I will explain what torture means and examine it using several ethical perspectives. I will focus especially on deontological ethics and the golden rule, while also considering the utilitarian argument. Finally, I will give my own ethical position on whether torture can be normally justified or not. So, what is torture? Torture can be understood in the deliberate infliction, as the deliberate infliction of pain, physical or psychological suffering on another person. It can be used for different purposes, including obtaining information, forcing someone to cooperate, punishment, or intimidation. This important point from an ethical perspective is that the suffering is intentionally inflicted. This immediately raises questions about human dignity and individual rights. We have to ask whether there are circumstances in which deliberate causing of such pain or torture can ever be morally accepted. The problems surrounding ethical torture. Ethical torture or torture becomes an ethical problem, because it creates a conflict between moral principles and possible outcomes. For example, someone could argue that torture is acceptable if it produces information that perfects a serious attack, but from another person's point of view, the person deliberately causing severe suffering is wrong of the result, regardless of the result. This leads to an important question in ethics. Should a good outcome be enough reason to justify an action that would normally be considered morally wrong? Deontological ethics provides one of the strongest philosophical challenges to torture. Deontology focuses on duties, rules, and moral principles rather than simply looking at the consequences of an action. From this perspective, people deserve to be treated with respect. Torturing someone to obtain information can be seen as using that person merely as a means to achieve another goal. Therefore, even if the information could be useful, the action itself may violate important moral duty. The golden rule. The golden rule gives us another way to think about torture. It is commonly expressed as the idea that we should treat others as we would want to be treated ourselves. This principle encourages empathy, respect, and compassion. If we would not want someone to deliberately cause us severe physical or psychological suffering, then the golden rule challenges us to think carefully before doing that to someone else. Mim- Mimics also discuss versions of this principle across different religious traditions, including Christianity. The utilitarian argument approaches the issue differently because it focuses on consequences. A utilitarian might ask whether torture could produce a greater moral benefit than harm. For example, someone might argue that torture could potentially prevent an attack or save many lives. However, we must also consider the suffering caused, the possibility of abuse, available information, and the wider effect on society. Therefore, even from a consequence-based perspective, this issue is not as simple as it is on the screen. There are different arguments concerning torture, one of which says that people sometimes use to justify torture, especially in extreme situations. They may argue that there is an imminent threat, innocent lives are at risk, or critical information is needed. On the other hand, there are strong arguments against torture, which says that it can violate human dignity, be abused by authorities, undermine trust, and normalize cruelty. This creates the central ethical question: can a possible benefit ever justify deliberately causing severe suffering to another person? In comparing this ethical perspective from different rules, deontological, utilitarianism, golden rule, we say that this gives us different ways of evaluating torture. Deontology asks whether torture violates moral duties and rules. Utilitarianism asks whether its consequences create overall benefits than harm. The golden rule asks us to consider how would we want to be treated and encourage empathy. Virtue, eth- Virtue ethics asks what torture reveals about quality, such as compassion, justice, courage, and humanity. Looking at the issue from several perspectives helps us understand its complexity. Last one. My ethical position is that torture should not be accepted in any way as a normal way of obtaining information or achieving political goals. Human dignity should be respected, and deliberately inflicting severe suffering creates several moral problems. I find the deontological argument particularly persuasive because it reminds us that some actions should not be simply justified by appealing to a desirable result. In conclusion, ethics is not only about what we achieve, it is also about how we treat people while trying to achieve it. I think that's all for this. Do have a nice day.